What would it feel like to dance with the First Lady of the United States? For Army Sergeant Henry Waller, this once-in-a-lifetime moment became a reality at the Commander-in-Chief Ball on Inauguration Night. But beyond the glamour and attention, what did it really mean for him to represent the military in such a personal and public way? How did this unexpected moment of spotlight reshape his understanding of service and sacrifice? And what lasting impact did it have on the man who had sworn to protect and serve his country? This video delves into Sergeant Waller's emotional journey from the ballroom to the deeper connections that bind military service to the heart of the nation. Sergeant Waller had been selected for this honor, a role few military personnel would experience in their careers. His impressive height, standing at 6'6", made him a natural standout. But beyond his physical presence, Waller had earned his place through years of impeccable service. As a member of the Honor Guard, he had stood in silence at state funerals, attended White House arrivals, and been a symbol of the professionalism and dedication that the U.S. Army embodies. However, this moment, stepping onto that ballroom floor to dance with the First Lady, was different. It was personal. Leading up to the night, Waller's emotions had been a whirlwind. He had spent hours preparing, mentally rehearsing, and ensuring his composure would remain intact. After all, the Commander-in-Chief Ball was no ordinary event. It was a celebration of leadership, service, and unity, a night that brought together the military and the political elite. But for Waller, it was about something deeper. He had never imagined he would be part of this grand ceremony, let alone share the dance floor with the First Lady herself. The weight of the moment was significant, and the nerves were unmistakable. When he was told he would be dancing with Melania Trump, the news still hadn't fully sunk in. Standing in the wings, waiting for his moment to step into the spotlight, Waller couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief. How did I get here? He would wonder to himself. The prestigious ball was a world away from the daily rigor of military life. Yet, as the moment neared, there was no turning back. The music played, and the crowd's energy built in anticipation. This was his time. The instant Waller's name was called, and he stepped onto the stage, the applause from the audience was thunderous. He kept his composure, reminding himself to stay focused, but it was hard. The entire world seemed to be watching. As he moved toward the First Lady, he could feel his heart racing, his palms sweating. The First Lady, dressed in an elegant blue gown, was poised and graceful, a true reflection of the dignity of the evening. She smiled warmly as he approached, and in that moment, the nerves began to melt away. The dance began. Waller, his towering frame barely a few inches from Melania Trump, was both focused and in awe of the moment. Every move, every step felt weighty with significance. But beyond the formalities, there was an undeniable connection between them. The music swelled around them, but it was as if time had slowed, and for a brief moment it was just the two of them on the floor. It wasn't about politics or the pomp of the event. It was about the simple beauty of the moment they were sharing. A dignified military man and the First Lady of the United States spinning across the ballroom floor. As they moved together, the crowd's applause rang out. Yet for Waller, it felt like it was all a dream. Was this really happening? His thoughts briefly wandered to his family, his wife, and how proud they must have been to see him here. But for now, in this space, all of that seemed secondary to the pure joy and privilege of sharing this moment. The presence of the First Lady, her elegance, and the mutual respect between them made it feel less like a performance and more like a conversation without words. Through the steps and sways of the dance, a brief but meaningful exchange occurred. Waller found his voice amidst the swirl of emotions. "How's your night going?" he asked, breaking the silence. Melania's smile grew wider, her warmth evident as she responded, "It's going well, thank you. How's yours?" Waller's face lit up. "Fantastic," he replied without hesitation. There it was, the simplicity of a shared moment between two people, one of which had just been thrust into the limelight of a world stage. But in that exchange, everything seemed genuine, free from the expectations of the event. For Waller, the dance was much more than just a moment in time. It was a reflection of the values he held as a soldier: honor, respect, and commitment. It was a privilege not just for him, but for the U.S. Army as a whole. It was a reminder that despite the trials of everyday life in the military, moments like these are what made it all worthwhile. As the music came to an end, Waller gently guided Melania to a stop, both of them smiling in the glow of the spotlight. The applause rang out again, louder this time, and Waller couldn't help but feel a wave of gratitude wash over him. It wasn't just the audience's approval, it was the sense of achievement, of having contributed something meaningful to that night's history. As the music faded, the dance floor began to settle, but the energy in the room didn't diminish. The evening's festivities continued, with the crowd enjoying every moment of the Commander-in-Chief ball. For Sergeant Waller, however, the significance of his dance with Melania Trump lingered in his mind. He had always been a soldier, accustomed to discipline, structure, and unwavering focus. But this night, this dance had shown him something more, a side of life that blended the formality of military service with the warmth of human connection. Waller watched as the First Lady gracefully made her way back to her seat, her poise leaving a lasting impression on him. There was something incredibly humbling about the whole experience. He had never imagined that such a moment would become part of his story. Growing up, he had always respected the traditions of the military, the duty and honor that came with his role. Yet standing there on the dance floor with the First Lady, it felt as though he was a part of something much larger than himself. As he returned to the sidelines, trying to regain his composure, Waller could hear the buzz of conversation around him. People were congratulating him, giving him nods of appreciation for his participation in the night's highlight. It wasn't just the physical act of dancing with the First Lady that left an impression on people, it was the significance of it. Waller had been selected, not only for his presence but also for what he represented. The dedication and commitment of the men and women who served their country every day. But as the night wore on, it became clear that Sergeant Waller's moment wasn't the only one of note. Just as the applause from his dance began to die down, President Trump took to the floor with a distinguished member of the military. Staff Sergeant Tatiana Solana from the United States Space Force was the next to join the Commander-in-Chief in an elegant waltz. The crowd turned their attention to them, intrigued by the sight of the President and one of the armed forces' rising stars. Waller watched as President Trump moved with a certain confidence, though not without a hint of hesitation in his steps. Still, the connection between him and Sergeant Solana was undeniable. There was something heartwarming about seeing the Commander-in-Chief step away from the podium and into a more personal, almost vulnerable space. And though President Trump may not have been known for his dancing skills, there was an undeniable charm in the way he tried to keep up with his partner. The dance continued, with Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife Usha also joining in the fun, exchanging partners with military guests in a lighthearted show of unity. Each new pairing brought its own charm, its own moments of laughter. Waller smiled to himself as he caught a glimpse of Usha, nervously stepping onto the floor with Petty Officer Emmanuel, one of the many who had helped make this night possible. The two exchanged nervous glances, but the lightness of their dance made it clear that the event wasn't just about military precision. It was about celebrating, letting go, and having fun. It was in moments like these that Waller realized how much the military meant to the heart of the nation. It wasn't about stiff uniforms or rigid regulations. It was about the connections formed between people from all walks of life, coming together to create something special. Watching Usha trip lightly alongside her partner, Waller felt that unity with even more clarity. These were the moments that built bridges, that showed the world not just the strength of military service, but the humanity that lies behind every uniform. As the night wore on, Waller found himself reflecting on how the evening had unfolded. He had come into this experience with no expectations other than to represent his fellow soldiers with pride. But what he had experienced was something much deeper, a personal connection to the people he served and the values that defined his career. The energy in the room had shifted. It was no longer about the high-profile guests or the glitzy decor. It was about the people, the military men and women who had worked so hard to make the night a success, and the families who supported them. It was about the unspoken bonds that tied everyone together, despite their different backgrounds and roles. Waller caught sight of his wife in the crowd, her face glowing with pride. She had watched from home, unable to attend, but still deeply connected to every step he took that evening. He could feel her presence with him as he navigated this surreal experience. As the final moments of the ball approached, Waller's thoughts returned to the dance. The joy he felt as he had twirled across the floor with Melania Trump wasn't just about the dance itself. It was about everything that led to it. The discipline, the dedication, and the respect that had allowed him to take that moment and hold it forever in his memory. In a way, the evening had been a reflection of what it meant to serve, to be part of something larger than oneself, to step out of the routine and experience the rare moments that define a lifetime. For Waller, the ball was not just an event. It was a celebration of everything he had worked for, everything he had been trained to do, and the honor of standing alongside people who shared those same values. As the evening continued, the atmosphere in the ballroom shifted from excitement to a quiet reverence, reflecting the importance of the moment. The Commander-in-Chief Ball wasn't just a celebration of the inauguration. It was a celebration of the military men and women who served their country day in and day out. For Sergeant Waller, being a part of this tradition was humbling. It wasn't just about a single dance with the First Lady. It was about representing the entire military community, each individual who wore the uniform, each person who stood ready to serve. Waller had always been proud of his military career, but this night, this dance had amplified that pride. The Commander-in-Chief Ball was a rare occasion that brought together politicians, military leaders, and civilians, all under one roof, united by a shared sense of duty and honor. But for Waller, it was a reminder that his role in the U.S. Army was part of something larger, a larger narrative of service, sacrifice, and dedication that extended beyond his personal experience. As the night wore on, Waller found himself reflecting on how far he had come to be in this position. He thought back to his early days in the Army, when he had first enlisted, driven by a sense of patriotism and duty. His career had taken him from one honorable duty to the next, but standing on the stage with Melania Trump felt different. It felt like the culmination of years of service, of hard work, and of honoring the commitment he had made to his country. The moment wasn't lost on him. Waller knew the significance of his position as a member of the Honor Guard. He wasn't just any soldier. He was one of the few selected to represent the best of the U.S. military. His role at the ball was symbolic, not only of his dedication, but of the military's unwavering commitment to the country it protected. The Honor Guard's presence at such high-profile events like this one wasn't just about appearances. It was a tangible representation of the service and sacrifice that millions of men and women made every day in the name of national security and freedom. Waller's thoughts drifted back to the dance floor. As the First Lady had smiled at him during their brief conversation, he had felt the weight of the moment settle into his bones. He had been trained for many things: ceremonial duties, high-pressure situations, moments where the world was watching. But this intimate moment with the First Lady was a reminder of the personal connections that bind military service to the heart of the nation. It wasn't just about marching in formation or standing at attention during state funerals. It was about people. It was about the individuals who put on the uniform every day, the families who supported them, and the nation that stood behind them. Looking across the ballroom, Waller saw familiar faces, many of them soldiers he had worked with over the years. The shared understanding between them was palpable. This night wasn't just about personal recognition. It was about representing the collective efforts of every man and woman in uniform. It was about standing shoulder to shoulder with those who shared the same sense of duty and sacrifice. As the night's events unfolded, the dances continued, but Waller couldn't help but think about the path that had led him here. He had always known that military life was about more than just carrying out orders. It was about serving something bigger than oneself. It was about contributing to the greater good, even in ways that weren't immediately apparent. And while the spotlight had shone brightly on him during that dance with Melania Trump, he knew it was part of something much larger, a narrative of service and commitment that had been written long before he stepped onto the stage. Despite the grandeur of the event, there was a quiet moment of reflection for Waller as he stood by the sidelines watching the other couples dance. It wasn't the glitzy surroundings that mattered to him. It was the simple recognition that in that room, surrounded by his fellow servicemen and women, he was part of something special. The dance had symbolized more than just a personal achievement. It had symbolized the collective strength of the U.S. military. And yet, even as the evening drew to a close, Waller couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of gratitude he felt. It was a privilege to be a part of such a historic event, to have danced with the First Lady, and to have been recognized for his role in serving the country. But more than that, it was the realization that the work he and his fellow soldiers did was the backbone of the nation's success. Every mission, every assignment, every sacrifice, big or small, contributed to the larger effort of defending the freedoms that Americans held dear. As the last dance of the night came to an end and the applause filled the room once more, Waller couldn't help but smile. This night, though fleeting, had been a testament to the hard work and dedication of all who served in the military. And for Sergeant Waller, that dance with Melania Trump would forever be a symbol of the bond between the U.S. military and the country it protected. As the evening began to wind down, the reality of what Sergeant Waller had experienced started to settle in. The applause had faded, and the lights in the ballroom dimmed slightly, but the weight of the night's events still hung in the air. He couldn't help but think back to the moments leading up to the dance, the nervousness, the excitement, the surreal feeling of being thrust into a moment that he would remember for the rest of his life. It was a dreamlike experience, one that was far beyond the typical duties and responsibilities of an Army honor guard. In the days that followed, Waller found himself reflecting not just on the dance itself, but on everything that had led to it. He thought about the hours of training, the long nights of preparation, and the mental discipline required to perform his duties with the utmost precision. But none of that had prepared him for the emotional complexity of the evening. The rehearsals had helped him perfect the movements, but nothing could have prepared him for the significance of dancing with the First Lady, or the overwhelming pride he felt in representing the U.S. Army on such a public stage. He thought about the pride his family must have felt, especially his wife, who had supported him throughout his career. She had been there during the long deployments, the training sessions, and the moments of doubt. But this moment was something entirely different. It was a reminder of the sacrifices they had both made along the way. Waller knew that his wife had watched from home, cheering him on as he danced in front of the world. The pride in her voice when she spoke to him on the phone afterward was clear, but he could also hear the wonder in her words. She had never imagined this moment for him, just as he hadn't. The night had been a whirlwind of emotions, and even as he settled back into his routine the next day, he couldn't help but replay the events in his mind. The experience had been overwhelming, but also deeply affirming. For a moment, he wasn't just a soldier. He was a symbol of something greater, the commitment and dedication that defined the U.S. military. The role he had played that night was not just about him. It was about representing the millions of men and women who had served and would continue to serve. Waller's thoughts also turned to the other soldiers who had participated in the ball. Each one had their own unique story, their own path that had led them to this historic night. But in that ballroom, on that dance floor, they were all bound by one thing: a deep, unwavering commitment to their country. Whether they were standing at attention, holding the flag high, or dancing with the First Lady, they were all part of a collective effort to honor the values that made the United States strong. The entire event had brought home the message of unity. It wasn't just about the politicians or the dignitaries. It was about the people who made the country what it was. For Waller, this realization had been one of the most powerful aspects of the night. He had been a small part of something much larger, something that transcended the individual. Waller's role as a member of the Honor Guard wasn't just ceremonial. It was a daily reminder of the sacrifices that had been made by those who served before him. Every time he stood at attention, every time he carried out a duty with precision, he was acknowledging that sacrifice. And now, standing on the stage with Melania Trump, he had been a representative of that dedication. The weight of it all was humbling. As the night came to a close, Waller had made his way off the dance floor, surrounded by the camaraderie of his fellow servicemen and women. The conversations were light, the mood still celebratory, but there was an underlying understanding between them all, a recognition of the significance of the event. They had all participated in something extraordinary, and they all understood the magnitude of what they had been a part of. It wasn't just about dancing with a high-profile guest. It was about celebrating their role in a larger mission, a mission that was rooted in duty, honor, and sacrifice. Even as he left the ball that night, Waller knew that this experience would remain with him forever. It wasn't just the glittering lights or the glamorous atmosphere, it was the realization that, as a soldier, he was part of something that went beyond the individual. He was part of a tradition, a legacy, and a collective effort that would continue to shape the future of the United States. That dance with Melania Trump, while brief, had crystallized that truth in a way that words alone couldn't capture. As he drove home, his mind wandered back to the beginning of the night, to the excitement of being chosen for such a prestigious moment. And now, looking back, he realized that the experience had meant more than he could have imagined. It had been a celebration of service, of sacrifice, and of the unity that defined the U.S. military and the country as a whole. The memories of that night would stay with him, not just as a personal achievement, but as a reminder of the deeper purpose that guided every soldier, every mission, and every act of service. As the days passed, Sergeant Waller found himself reflecting on the significance of that one night, that one dance, with a clarity that was both humbling and inspiring. It was the kind of experience that doesn't fade quickly, one that lingers in the mind and heart, reminding you of the larger purpose behind everything you do. For Waller, it wasn't just about the attention or the glamour of being part of such a high-profile event. It was about the deeper connection he had to the military community and to the nation as a whole. The dance with Melania Trump had been a personal honor, yes, but it had also been a symbol of something far greater. It symbolized the commitment of all those who served in the U.S. military, the men and women who put on the uniform each day, who pledged their lives to the service of their country. Every soldier, no matter their rank or position, played a part in the broader story of the military's role in securing the freedoms that Americans often take for granted. For Waller, the night had crystallized the understanding that his work, his service, was about more than just following orders or completing tasks. It was about the collective strength of the military, a group of individuals bound by duty, honor, and pride. It wasn't just about the ceremonial moments, it was about the quiet dedication that existed behind the scenes. Whether he was participating in a high-profile event like the inaugural ball or standing watch during a solemn ceremony, the values of the military were always present, guiding his every action. In the days following the ball, Waller received countless messages of congratulations from his fellow servicemen and women, his family, and even strangers who had seen the dance on television. Some praised his composure, others congratulated him on his poise, but all of them shared one sentiment: pride. They were proud of him not just for what he had done, but for what he represented. He wasn't just a soldier on the dance floor. He was a representative of the thousands of military men and women who served, often out of sight, but always with purpose. Waller's thoughts also turned to the other servicemen and women who had been part of the evening. Each of them had their own story to tell, their own journey that had led them to that night. But in that moment, they were all part of the same story, a story of service, sacrifice, and pride in their roles. They had each done their part to uphold the ideals of the country, and their presence at the ball was a recognition of that collective effort. It wasn't just about one man or one woman. It was about the countless individuals who made the military the powerful force it was. Looking back, Waller realized that this experience had also reinforced the sense of gratitude he felt toward his fellow soldiers. They were his comrades, his support system, and they had helped him get to that point. It wasn't just the training or the discipline that had prepared him for that night. It was the camaraderie, the shared experiences, and the understanding that they were all in this together. The military was a community in the truest sense of the word, and that unity was what made them stronger. As Waller returned to his daily duties, he found that the weight of the evening continued to resonate with him. The dance had been a fleeting moment, but its impact had been profound. It wasn't just the public recognition that stayed with him. It was the understanding of what that recognition meant. He had danced with the First Lady, but in doing so, He had represented every soldier who had ever served. He had stood as a symbol of the collective strength, resilience, and dedication of the U.S. military. And so, as he continued his service, Waller carried with him the pride of that night, the pride of being part of something larger than himself. He had danced with Melania Trump, yes, but more importantly, he had danced for all the men and women who wore the uniform, who served with honor, and who, like him, were committed to the cause of freedom and justice. It was a night that would forever be etched in his memory, not just as a personal achievement, but as a reminder of the larger mission he and his fellow servicemen and women undertook every day. In the years to come, when he looked back on his career, Waller would remember that dance as one of the defining moments of his service. Not because of the attention it brought him, but because of the deeper connection it forged between him, his comrades, and the nation he had sworn to protect. That moment would forever serve as a testament to the dedication, sacrifice, and unity that defined the U.S. military. It wasn't just about a single dance, it was about the service and honor that had carried him to that moment and would continue to guide him for the rest of his life. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.